So will you introduce yourself, Laurence, for everybody who's watching this video?
Okay.
So
My name is
introduce yourself.
Laurence Pevec, and I'm a participant in the postcard poetry program for the second year.
Great. I really appreciate your being here. It's wonderful to talk to people who have been involved in this, because I've been involved and I love it. So you said you've been in 2 years, is that right?
This is my second year, yeah. And the first year was a great deal of fun. I had a really good time, and I realized that it meets several of my needs participating in this project. So we can talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I would like to hear about that.
Well, first of all, I'm an artist, so my main focus is on the art of the program. I have written poetry, but I don't consider myself a poet. So it's really the art and sharing the art that appeals to me about this. I've also been a mail artist for maybe 30 or 40 years. So I like to exchange postcards and packages and various kinds of things with other artists primarily, but I also do with my family and, of course, friends of all kinds. So for years, I've been looking for the medium and the I guess the level of my involvement in art. My career was in design of all different kinds, but my heart has always been in the fine arts. One of the things about making fine art is determining a medium or a technique that you resonate with, as well as what subjects are you going to paint, or what imagery appeals to you. So these are kind of quests that I've been participating in for years, and the postcard poetry thing really helped me kind of lock down on something by allowing me to produce a lot of small pieces. So it's similar to working in a sketchbook, where you go in and you throw out all your ideas, and then you pick out the ones that are maybe good or maybe promising, and then you develop those. So that was a real kind of a side benefit of participating in this.
So have you gone on to take some of those postcard arts and recreate them in different ways, or expand them, or, as you said, develop them?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Not as many as I'd like, but I have so many other things going on that, I'm just building up a backlog of things that I want to do. And the pieces I want to create from the postcards are, large enlargements, substantial enlargements, up to 3 feet by 5 feet or something like that.
So large canvas paintings and
Yeah,
collage
right.
work and things. I know that you did some interesting work with wax that was fascinating to me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I continued with the encaustic painting in this year's Popo.
Oh, great.
And I'm realizing that I really want to make those big. I really want to make big work. And as I said, the postcards kind of gave me a sketch to start with.
That's fabulous. How did you find out about the Poetry Festival?
Well, I'm a friend of Paul's.
Okay.
Paul and I are, participate in the same spiritual practice. So I've known Paul for many years and have listened to his poetry and kind of watched him develop, the poetry lab. And I haven't participated in that particularly, but yeah, I've known him for a long time, and we're quite good friends. And he introduced me to it. And at first I said, well, I'm not a poet, I'm an artist, I don't really. But then I thought, well, wait a minute, this is spontaneous poetry. Poetry can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. I do write, so at least I know something about, using the written language. And I said, well, I'll give it a try. So that was last year. And this year it took another step forward in my artistic activities.
That's great. It's nice that you're able to integrate that too with the thing that you sort of have started with already, the visual arts, and being able to bring another art and fold it in is really lovely.
Yeah. Well, in my imagination, everybody does this.
I wish I draw like a 6-year-old.
But it's not true because, many, in fact, the majority of the postcards I get are purchased postcards, or there's some little alteration too, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But, for me, it's a different thing. Like, I am way into the art.
Yeah, and I love that there are people who do that, because it's such and I don't know, it's almost a gift for those of us, especially who aren't visual artists. It's like, I'm getting art in the mail. It's fabulous. So how do you have a poetic practice outside of the postcard festival?
I really don't. I do carry a sketchbook, and every once in a while I get a hit. Something occurs to me that sounds like it might be a first line or a theme. And so I usually write that down, and I have books of these things. They very seldom get translated into or worked up into a poem, but they're always there. And if I need that, I will certainly, access it.
And I'll ask you the broader question, which is, you've mentioned a little bit about how the festival augments your artistic development and your development of art. Are there other ways in which the festival augments your art practice more broadly?
Yes,
Can you tell me about that?
I can. I am a videographer as well, amateur, but I'm particularly interested in interviewing artists and the artistic process around creativity and so on. So I videotape my whole Popo practice this year. I haven't been able to work it into a finished video, but I probably will at some point. I have so many other projects going on. They can't all be, and it takes a lot of time to review and transcribe and then edit into a short video what I'm doing. But again, it's always there, and I can come back to it anytime I want. So yes, the encaustic painting and the video and the poetry are the three things that I'm using the Poetry Festival as inspiration for, or motivation for.
Okay, great. Do you have a method when you're going through August, a postcard method that you use? Are there themes you pick out, or is it related to the art that you do? Or do you have I guess method is the right word for it.
Well, we're looking at kind of two things that the festival kind of wants to bring together.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this because I love reading poetry, although I'm not a prolific poet. I do love reading it. And I'm really interested in art and really interested in what's going on with me when I create something. So the major theme that shows up in many of my poems is my self-exploration. What am I doing here? Why am I doing it? Why am I so interested in sending a work of art, to a total stranger? And so that's my main thing. It's fun. It's fun to just do something and then imagine, well, what are they thinking about this? Will they respond to this, or will it just fall on the floor? So there's that. The themes in general that I use in my poetry aren't necessarily directly related to the artwork. The art is generated kind of separately, and then the poetry separately. So sometimes they tend to mystically mesh, but a lot of times they don't.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
And I leave it up to the recipient to determine whether there's a connection, because they're bringing a whole new thing right to it. Right. I know what it is, and I know what the process is, but they have the added, I guess, the added value of making their own interpretation. And I find that very often what I'm doing is not interpreted the way I would expect it to be. It's curious about art, but unless you have some really obvious imagery, representational artwork, everybody's going to interpret it differently based on their own life experience and their own lenses.
Is that something that you are thinking about while you're developing the visual art, that somebody could see this all these different ways? Or is it you represent what you put forward, and then later it comes to you that different people might see this differently?
Yeah, I'm totally spontaneous with it. In this particular case, the whole 31 postcards were assemblages, collages of doodles that I made when I was participating in a business networking. We had a meeting once a week, and early in the morning. Are you familiar with BNI?
No.
No. Okay. Well, Business Network International. And we would sit there and listen to, 15 or 20 people give presentations. And I always felt like I listened better if I was doodling. So at the Best Western Inn, they would give us all these little pads of paper,
Yeah.
which is really dangerous for me, because if they give me a pen and a piece of paper, I have no resistance to just spontaneously drawing. So I ended up with 100 at least of these little sketches, these little doodles, and I saved them. This was from years ago. I saved them, and I said, well, how can I use these? And then I began looking through them. I said, well, yeah, they're kind of interesting. They have their own life and their own kind of energy. So I didn't want to develop them in any way, but I did want to use them. So I scanned them and made files, and I used them as collages in the postcards.
Wow, what a brilliant process. I've never heard anything like that. I get the sense that, whoever receives the postcards gets almost a piece of your subconscious that you put on the page.
Oh, hey, let me tell you.
Yeah,
Let me tell you, because what I've later discovered is that anything that comes out of me is a process of my inner life, is a manifestation of my inner life. So I've got all these characters, and you'll see some of them. And if we show some of the postcards, we'll see some of them. And and they're muses. They are characters in my personality. One of them looks like Ronald Reagan, and I don't know why that came up. I didn't intend it to be that way, but God, that looks like Ronald Reagan. Is that inside me?
Yeah, somewhere he's lodged. Well, that's such a gift for the people who receive your postcards. Like, you give a little bit of yourself to share with them.
I think
I'm looking forward to seeing them.
I think it's the purpose of art. I really do. I think art is about sharing who we are. I'm almost as interested in the artist whose work I see and whose work I collect as I am in. I'm almost as interested in the life of the artist as I am in the artist, in the art that I collect.
That's wonderful. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing some of them. You've given me one story about your creative experience. I'd like another one.
Okay. Another part of the story is again the process, and that is collecting the well, first of all, when the work is done, both sides are finished. So the poetry is written, the stamp is on, the address is on. In this case, I gave every one of them a number corresponding with the day I sent it. So that was an important way of kind of keeping track. I then created a catalog. Let me get it. I created the catalog for this year, and I did for last year as well. And then I have all of the postcard, the list that that was given to me by the Popo program by Paul. I have the list with my notes on it. I have all the postcards that I received in the pocket. And then I have a photocopy of both sides of the postcard I sent. so
Wow.
that if I ever want to go back to that, like I said, to create a larger work of art or develop the poetry in any way, it's all there in one place. So I don't have to, you know, struggle with finding stuff and so on. So that's a creative process in itself. The other thing is it didn't stop on day 31 for me. I began sending out many more postcards to friends and other artists. I've sent out at least 50 or 60 additional postcards. So this is more
Wow.
than just the poetry festival, you know, it's also a major work of art for me that's ongoing in a daily practice.
The people I know who do mail art, including you now, it seems to be the kind of thing where once you get a roll on, almost you can continue to access the part of you that can put the art in a certain limited, like use and work with those limitations of a postcard, which is really incredible. And you answered one of my questions, which was whether you send bonus postcards, which it sounds like you do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I always send Paul a postcard, even if he's not on my list, but
No, but
I really admire Paul, and I like, you know, I like what he does, and I like the way he does it, and so he gets at least one work of art from me a year,
that's
maybe
wonderful.
more.
I'm sure he appreciates them because he is, his apartment is full of beautiful things. So I assume that's
Yeah.
part of the beautiful things he puts up. So he asked me to ask everybody about 3 things you love about the Poetry Postcard Festival.
Well, it keeps my hand in the artwork. So I started planning this thing at the beginning of the year, and I had this large board on an easel in my studio, and I thought what I was going to do was divide it up into 31 pieces, do one large work of art, and then cut it apart
Oh,
so that everybody got a piece of the puzzle. And then I would develop the poetry in the same way. Well, that didn't work out. It sat there for months before I never got to it. And I realized that it was a bit contrived, and it's a concept that I've used before in mail art, but it didn't seem to fit for this. So, it's being discerning and discriminating about what I put out into the world. So that's an advantage. You have to make decisions about what people see of your work. And of course, you want it to be well received, but you also want it to be meaningful and an expression of yourself, myself. I don't write poetry very often, so it gives me a chance to record under a lot of different kind of headings. And in this case, I recorded dreams, let's see, self-observations, inner content, things to learn from rocks, cliche phrases, relationship challenges, and a metaphor that I started developing.
wow,
So
that is a broad range of things that
yeah. I don't feel any need not express any aspect of my life. I think most artists really live very complex inspirations, and as I'm getting older, I have more time to explore a lot of these things that, in my working years, I wasn't able to.
yeah, time.
So it's an expanding process. I mean, that may be the third thing that you asked for, that it's expanding. And that's what, even at my late age, I want to continue expanding.
So are you talking about sort of mental and spiritual expansion, or technical expansion, or all of the above?
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above.
That's great. That's phenomenal, actually. And what three things would you say could use some improvement about this project?
Well, I would like to think poetically more. My poems tend to be very prosy. That's not a problem with me because I think that prose poetry is as compelling as metered and rhymed poetry. There's some drama in my life, you know, that maybe, you know, short of writing an autobiography, I would like to express in some way. So I think developing the poetry is a good way of doing it. Short snippets, you know, short pieces that say a lot about the different levels of expressing: spiritual, cognitive and mental, emotional, even physical. So learning to write better is definitely going to be an improvement. I've taken workshops and others, and I want to continue doing that. Technically, I had some problems because with the weight of the card after it's been totally processed with the wax and all, I have to put on, you know, like first class stamps, which I love because I love buying stamps, especially the really interesting ones, you know, that are artistic in themselves. But I've had labels fall off and the stuff, you know, the card returned. I've had cards returned because, you know, I forgot to put a stamp on or something else happened. So there's a lot of different processes that go through the mail when you're doing this way that I think really adds to the whole experience, frankly. And then I have to resend things and explain why they didn't get their card and so on. So I think just technically being really careful that the cards get to the people,
It's a challenge.
you know, intact. But there's no way I'm gonna, you know, use a undeveloped card.
Mm.
I mean, it's too much fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of part of why you're there. So are there things that you would change about the way the festival is run?
Let's see. Well, I think the only issue that I have with it, and it's not really an issue, is that I only got like 2/3 of the cards that I was expecting to get. And I realize that everybody's under all different kinds of situations and pressures. So I put quite a lot of effort into it, and I would hope that others would as well. I don't always feel that that's the way it is, but there's nothing you can do about the way people react or respond. So you can't make a lot of rules, because if you make a lot of rules, you can encourage people to participate fully and you know, do the full list, but you can't insist on it. So, and there's so many circumstances in human life that, you know, so I think it's run really well. I mean, there was this thing about updating lists,
Mm-hmm.
which was, I think my list was updated and there was one person added, which didn't make a big difference to me. So almost, I sent a couple of postcards overseas,
Mm-hmm.
which I did first. Rather than put them in order, I did them first, so that you know, they had at least 2 weeks before the expected date to get them. So they were out of sync, but I felt that was fine.
And I think that people overseas are aware that the mail can be an issue, both coming and going. So it's nice that people are understanding about it.
Yeah. Can't really think of anything else that I would improve. Okay.
And do you have any suggestions for online communities, poetry communities, maybe artist communities that would be interested in hearing about the postcard project?
Well, I subscribe to, I don't subscribe to any mail art, but I have paid some attention to some of the interesting things. I think there was a postcard project that happened a couple of years ago and maybe still be going on about secrets, right? People were encouraged to send a postcard describing a secret that they really needed to tell somebody. And no names were given, you know. I'm telling you, it was absolutely amazing.
Oh, I can imagine.
It was absolutely amazing. And I read hundreds of these, and I think they became a couple of books. Whoever, had the website made these books, and people were telling amazing things that it was the only way they could share something that was inside them and could have been problematic for them psychologically with other people. It was kind of cathartic. That community might be interested, in something like, or a community like that, or another project like that. It doesn't have to be secrets. It could be,
Yeah, that's
difficult conversations. How about difficult conversations?
And are there other in-person artistic or online communities that you think might, or sorry, artistic or poetic communities that might be interested in the festival?
Well, I promote the festival as much as I can with other artists. I'm always talking about it. I sent out a email blast to my artist friends who I thought would be interested in it, because they get postcards from me. Why not participate in a wider way, bigger way? I don't think anybody ever signed up from that, but that's okay. Everybody has, does what they want to do artistically.
Right.
So I honestly don't know of any other community. I met the wife of the widow of an artist that I went to college with, went to art school with back in 1966.
Yeah.
I looked them up. She lived in Washington, D.C. Looked them up when I got there and found out that my old student friend was dead. He died 2 years earlier, and I missed the opportunity to connect with him. She's a poet, so we had lunch together in Washington when I was visiting there, and then I sent her a card. So I have the opportunity of continuing correspondence with her, and I would love it if she would participate, but who knows, it may not be her thing. And
Right. Or she may not have been at a good time at that point. You
Yeah.
can't tell, as you say.
yeah, the thing is that this artist student, who was a student at the time, had a very successful career as a fine artist and printmaker, and he was like one of the most talented guys in my cohort. And the fact that I never kept touch with him was a sad thing, and it struck me as a sad thing. I don't tend to be very good at that, like maintaining long distance relationships and long-term relationships. So it's kind of a lesson to learn,
Yeah. And do you have any of his artwork from when you were students, or
No, I
just memories?
suggested to his widow that I would love to buy a piece if she decided to sell any of his work. And I have a, limit to how much I could spend on it. He was installing a major retrospective show at the International University. What's it called? American University
Oh, yeah.
in
Wow.
Washington. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And he had a heart attack while he was installing the show.
Oh, gosh. Oh,
And so obviously I went online. There's lots of his work online, and I could have been participating in his art, in her poetry. They collaborated on a catalog, and she provided the poetry and he provided the imagery.
Wow.
He was a teacher at Howard University for years, and I think, in my opinion, a major Black, image maker.
He sounds like a really remarkable person. Do you mind sharing his name so that people can look him up?
Well, I don't mind, and I hope that her name is, I forgot her name. His name is Michael B. Platt.
Platt.
Platt. And I'm sorry, her name, I sent her a card so I can get it really quickly. Let me just get that. Carol Bean, Beane, Carol Bean is her name. She's a remarkable poet, and I would so much like her to participate in this, or participate in other things that the Cascade Poetry Lab does. But she's in Washington. Maybe that's, I don't know. I mean, you have a national audience, right? You have a national participation.
Yeah, national and international. And I think I always like to get names so that people can go and explore people that you've met or people that are inspiring. So it would be nice I'm going to take a look for his artwork, because I'm not a visual artist myself, but
Yeah.
I love other people's work. I like getting recommendations, so I get time to look.
Well, the major work that he was doing was having to do with the Aboriginals in Australia. He took several trips to Australia, and he did his sketches and photography there, and then he brought it back to his studio in Washington and in Georgia. I think they lived in Georgetown or north of Georgetown, and then developed the work. And it's very strong work, especially if you're interested in the process, the whole development of Black culture and racial problems we're having in this country. All that sort of thing is,
and that's such interesting.
So rich. I mean, it is so rich. It's painful in many ways, but it's also very rich.
It's kind of work that needs to be done, is how I think of it. Even though it's painful, it's like, well, it's important.
Yeah.
Well,
and
thank
the
you.
poets and the artists are so important.
Yeah, that's something. I suppose that's part of what Paul's goal is here, is to remind people of that. Do you have any advice for people who are considering joining the Poetry Festival?
Advice?
Yeah.
Immerse yourself in it. It's only 30 days or 31 days. Pay attention. I mean, really make it a thing. I mean, for me, it's been such a gratifying experience that I can't imagine not doing it next year, and finding a whole new way of expressing the two things that I so admire.
That's great. That's really good advice.
And the art.
And do you have a postcard poem or two that you'd like to share along with the artwork? We'll find out if that screen sharing works.
I do.
Great.
I'm going to have to, or maybe that came in. Let me just check. What I'm going to do, I think what I'll do here is, I prepared a number of them for our interview. And so I'm going to put up the first one, which was, oh boy, I've got to, have you given me screen sharing?
I sure have. Is it fussing?
Where do I find that? How do I find
it? Should be down towards the bottom, and it should say share screen.
Oh, there it is, of course.
Let's see if that works.
Okay, let me go to my desktop.
Yay, it worked.
Yeah. Can you see this?
Sure can. I would love it if you could blow it up a little bit so that we can see it a little better. Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Okay, so now how do I get to the poetry? Okay, I'm going to read from the other computer.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Because I covered up with, obviously you can only have one thing on the screen at a time.
Right.
Okay. So this is in the category of my dream poems. It's to Robin, August 1st, 2021. Eyes open to another day, arise, and first thing, check my dream file. Growing out of my partner's furry back or shoulder, pulling it out. Sorry, I have to start over. Can you edit that out?
I sure can.
Okay. Part of the problem is I don't have my glasses on. There, okay. Dreams, number 1 to Robin, August 1st, 2021. Eyes open to another day, arise, and first thing, check my dream file. Did the mushrooms return? Growing out of my partner's furry back or shoulder, part vegetable, part insect. Pulling it out, now a fungus with leaves, but also a pulsing animal trying to escape my grasp. Who knows what it is and how my submind put it together. Intuitively, passionately, I know it's true. I know it's me. Okay, so that was number 1.
That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
What would you like next?
You
6?
choose. You choose what you think would be something you would like to share.
Okay, I'll open this one. It's another dream.
Wow, these are the doodles are remarkable.
Oh, thank you. Number 6 to Geraldine, August 6, 2021. So I had this dream one night when I was very young. I stood in front of a large cabinet with lots of drawers, 20 or 30 drawers. It was similar to the one in my father's garage. As I opened each drawer, I gasped. I was thrilled and was happy at the collection of objects, sorted by type, each drawer contained. What luck to be so blessed with so many options. I became a collector of things as well as images, all filed away inside and outside my being.
Again, marvelous. There's something like a combination of modern sensibility and a beat sensibility at the same time that I'm just finding so remarkable and fresh.
Well, thank you so much.
Those are really remarkable poems. Do you have time to give us one more?
I do.
Okay, great.
So here's one.
Ooh.
So this is number 29 under the title, under the category of self-observation related to creativity and art. 29 to Ellie, August 29th, 2021. I often get trapped, or at least stopped, by the thoughts about value and whether anything I do or make has any intrinsic value. What value do you place on beauty? This artist's effort to create something other than a useful object or tool, something that appeals to the heart or emits an energy that touches the soul. If you were blind, Ellie, would my effort in creating this card be wasted?
That is amazing. I want to ask you a technical question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I noticed one of the doodles on that collage is red. Let's stop sharing screen so that I can see you a little better.
Let me, that was,
There we go.
it was 29.
How did you do that? Because did you actually doodle in red pen, or did you convert the black doodle into a red doodle? I mean, this is like basic design question because I'm not an artist.
Why don't we share again? Okay.
Okay, let me redo this, and come on.
Because I'd love to describe the process.
Okay, great. Here, okay, here, it should let you do it again now.
Okay. Okay, this card is a collage, drawing, and encaustic. So so it's like a three-step process. I created all the collages first. And these are, as I said, the doodles from this experience I had listening to all these people giving presentations. But they've also become characters in my, from my psyche. This is my Black sister, who is my muse. She is printed, digitally printed from the file in red ink.
Oh, okay.
And cut out. The red background is watercolor overlaid with a different color wax, which is partially transparent. So the color of the watercolor kind of shows through the wax.
Is the wax the black and the scratched sort of looking parts?
Yeah. The scratching is done with a tool that's like a comb or has like a fork. Okay. So I scrape away and scratch away the wax after it's been applied. And so, you can reveal as little or as much as you want of the imagery below. It could be completely obscured. Now, this relates to an experience I had a long time ago, that if we took a large canvas that had our entire lives on it in imagery, and we covered it all over with black ink or black paint, and we scraped a little bit off in the corner, that's about what we really know. What we see is what we really know about life in the universe, right? Mm-hmm. We just know so little, so that everything we experience is important or feels important. So when I make these cards, they feel significant to me. They're not just throwaway items. And so sharing them becomes something of personal value for me. It's more than just, it's a whole process of sharing, a whole process of giving something of myself. So
that's really, thank you for sharing that process, because that is amazing. And it is such a good metaphor for how we see and what we know and how much we don't. Yeah. It's really, and how we go out uncovering ourselves. Oh, what did I just do? Okay. And my last question is there anything that I should have asked you and didn't?
Nothing comes to mind specific to the postcard project. I think we've covered pretty well. I mean,
well,
there's plenty you can more talk about, but it's specific to the different poems and the different things and so on. And that's probably more time than you want to spend.
Sometime I would love to do that. I'll have to talk with Paul about maybe having people come and talk about specific poems they wrote and their meanings and their thoughts, and if they did the artwork, how they relate, or if they don't. I'm going to pass that thought on to him. But in the meantime, I will say thank you very much for spending part of your morning with me. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed hearing your poems and seeing your artwork. I feel very blessed myself to have been part of that.
Well, thank you. It's Ina, is it?
It is.
Yeah, thank you, Ina, for your willingness to share my process and my involvement in this. As I said, it's very significant for me to have an ongoing project like this and have it kind of remotivated, re-stimulated every year.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, that you're a part of it and that you've taken this time. It's going
I
to
hope
help.
you get on my list next year.
Oh, and if not, you can always send me a postcard. You just ask
Right.
Paul, he'll give you my address.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
Thank you very
And
much.
I hope I talk to you soon.
All the best. Bye-bye.